All right. Hello and welcome to our extended disc mini webinar. It's our 15-minute webinar today. And it's on a topic that, we've all come across at some point in time in our careers. It's about how entering or re-entering the job market. We'll talk about how DISC can help you be better prepared and present the best opportunities for your success. My name is Christina Bowser, and I'm the training director here at Extended DISC. And joining me today is my wonderful colleague, Amy Lipinski, senior trainer at Extended DISC. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Christina. Glad to be here today.
Yes. We will be recording this webinar. We'll be posting it on our Extended DISC YouTube channel if you miss any of it or you want to review it or share it. We love your questions. Unfortunately, we won't all probably be able to take them live. So go ahead and put them in the Q&A section. And if we aren't able to get to them live, I promise we'll follow up with you after. So entering or re-entering the job market. How can DISC help us do that? It's a pretty crazy market out there, right? It's a pretty crazy world. There's a lot of uncertainty. And remember, what DISC does is it provides us supporting information about ourselves, but it also helps us better understand the other person. So we're going to show you some ways to use your DISC results to bring that confident self-awareness and to give you that competitive edge that we all need to kind of stand out. Remember, when you're using DISC, we oftentimes think of DISC as a communication tool and only a communication tool. But DISC explains how we prefer to do things, how we prefer to make decisions, how we prefer to manage other people, how we prefer to do a job interview. DISC helps us and explains how we are seen by other people. Anything you'd add, Amy?
No, I think that, I'm excited about the webinar today because I think there's just a lot of information, and it even gave me a new perspective in looking at our reports and how we can use it to prepare in this way. Because we often say the reports don't belong in your desk drawer or in your trunk, right? And so when we think about the report, it's part of our 4 steps to effective interactions. And it really is step 2. And we use it as a way to help us increase our awareness about who we are, but also that understanding of how other people see someone with our DISC style. And that is how we can use this to really help us kind of stand out from the competition within this job market. And looking through each of the pages, we can use these pages in different ways to help us prepare for the interview, the questions, thinking about, is it the right job fit for me? Knowing this information just brings that confident self-awareness. We always talk about owning our style, owning who we are. And sometimes I think just reading through some of these pages is that little bit of confidence boost that we need to remind ourselves of what we do really well. And most importantly, it gives us that language then and how we can best communicate our value. And I think that's one of the key indicators of standing out from the competition, being able to articulate the value that you bring, clearly understanding and having that awareness about your strengths, etc. And being able to share specific examples then of how you do that best.
So in terms of what I would want to remind you is that when you are, we need a competitive advantage from any point in the job market, in searching in the job market, but it gives you that first step too. If you think about it, as soon as maybe you apply for a job, if if you can reach out to that person, or if they send you an email, if you can identify even their style based on how they tend to write their emails, that already is going to give you a step up. If it's someone who's like very direct to the point, maybe you tailor your email response that way, but if there's someone chatty, it might be better to respond by saying, hey, can I just pick up the phone and give you a call? So this can not only help, as Amy talks about, knowing yourself, knowing your strengths, knowing your challenges, that really gives you advantage, but also being able to know the other person right from the start.
So those of you who are familiar with our individual assessment, there's a lot of great information within the reports. And with such a short webinar today, we don't have time to go page by page, even though I desperately wanted to. So I tried to put it all in as much as I could into a couple of slides. So some of the pages that we're going to kind of just pull out to talk about are the first one, your strengths page, right? What do we do well? And how can we communicate that within an interview to help us stand out, really picking out those strengths that might tie to that specific job description. And as we talk about with extended disc, overusing our strengths, being aware of how we use our strengths, how they show up, can also come into play. And those are sometimes those challenges we may encounter. And we all know that you get that question, well, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses, right? And being able to talk about what you do well and maybe some of those challenges, but most importantly, how that awareness has helped you to adjust so that you overcome some of those challenges. And again, thinking about specific examples based on the information that you see in here. I think the other key point is, I know when I used to interview, I would get nervous thinking, I got to sell myself. I'm interviewing them as just as much as they're interviewing me, right? So thinking about your motivators page and the situations that reduce your motivation and using that to help you create questions, right? Looking through the job description, circling motivators, underlining the demotivators, which one has more? Is it the right fit for you? And being able to find out a little bit more about that environment and what types of questions to ask going into that interview with the hiring manager.
And, bonus tip for you guys today that are attending this webinar, it's not in the standard individual assessment, but for your clients, you can actually generate a hiring report. Or if you don't even want to do the hiring report, there's a section of the hiring report that actually generates questions based on your natural style, as well as your, what we call your perceived need to adjust. And imagine having those questions ahead of time that are going to pinpoint who you are. Now you're able to practice. Maybe you'll actually have better expectations of going into the interview of what that interview may put you on the spot, and you'll actually be able to answer those types of questions.
That's a great hint, Christina. I love it. Another way to use the reports, right?
Yeah.
The other page I wanted to talk about a little bit was just the reaction to pressure situations, because I think this page oftentimes gets overlooked. Sometimes I refer to it as not always the most flattering of pages, right? It's where we have the most opportunity to be vulnerable in looking at how we may respond to pressure situations, or we might not even be aware of it, right? This is how other people may see us responding to these pressure situations. And again, having that awareness around how people may perceive us under pressure or how we may show up is going to lead us to making adjustments, being able to adjust, being able to overcome that, right? Having that awareness will lead us to having more confidence around it, being better prepared, being able to communicate that value. And it just helps us understand. We might have already been making some of these adjustments. We probably already are, right? It's not our weaknesses when we look at this page. It's ways to be aware of how we may respond or how people may see us. And that might be that blind spot that we're not aware of because we're feeling that pressure. And then all of our reports also have a great tips page, just again, looking at those tips of what we can do well and what we might shift and do differently. Again, to help communicate that value, to help us set us apart from our competition.
Yeah, I think in terms of like, how do we set ourselves apart? And obviously, for us as disc trainers, we're doing it from a disc perspective. And how can we use and leverage disc in a way that, for me, confident self-awareness is already like one major step forward that sets you apart. This is owning who you are, and also being having the ability to address the challenges of your style, knowing that you don't, putting yourself out there, as Amy said, making yourself vulnerable, but more importantly, you're addressing it, and maybe you've already taken steps to develop yourself in those areas that tend to challenge you, so that you become a more attractive potential employee. So confident self-awareness is one, but really remembering, going through this interview process, again, Amy mentioned it, it's not just about you and what you're selling yourself, but it's also understanding the person that's on the other end of the interview process. And the sooner you have information about that other person, or about the company that you're interviewing with, the more likely you're going to be able to connect with them in a way that they're going to want to learn more.
Yeah, and it brings us to this slide, right? Because we want to actually apply DISC. We've been talking about using the report, which I started off saying that's really just one step within our 4-step process, right? It's understanding your DISC style, how you show up, how people see you or see someone with that DISC style. And the report can help us definitely prepare, gain that confident self-awareness we've been talking about. But the next step then is applying DISC, right? Identifying that DISC style of others. And I think what makes it unique in this environment is it might not be in person like we're used to. It might be something, a new environment for us all. Like Christina had mentioned, kind of cluing into the email, maybe a telephone call, the Zoom conference call that you're on, right? It's going to be a little bit harder, but there's still those clues that you can observe to determine and assess and recognize what you believe that person's DISC style might be, so that you know how best to adjust. Because again, adjusting isn't to change ourselves. It's so that we can best be heard. We can better that interaction. And when we're applying and hiring and interviewing and looking to be that best candidate, we definitely want them to hear how we bring value, right? And so adjusting to the way that they might hear that message more clearly and more effectively is going to just lead us to better success and more success.
Right. I think, I'm telling you, getting hired nowadays is not like how I did it. I used to, for those of you that are my age, and I'll own it, I'm pretty old. You used to go to the bulletin boards of companies, right? And you used to look at these job applications, and you usually got to talk to someone in HR. You got to make a connection right away. But now everything is algorithms and typing in, and now you can apply to 500 jobs along with 10,000 people. So how do we, whatever we can use to make us stand out, to again, be more confident in what we can bring to a job that we're applying for. And that's what really DISC is all about. It's about supporting what you already do well, in a way that you can convey it to the other person, but you can also tap into how they would react most positively to you. Hopefully that ends in, offering you a job. But that's really kind of why we use DISC in this situation. Any last thoughts, Amy?
No, I'm just excited and thinking outside of the box and how we can use our reports in different ways, and hopefully, bring that self-confident awareness to people, because I think that's just the key, half the battle right there, having the confidence when you walk in.
All right. Well, Amy and I could probably talk much longer, but we tried to consolidate it into 15 minutes. We definitely have more resources for you. If you're interested, if you want to look at, the hiring reports, I apologize, we call it the candidates reports. If you want to look at different types of reports that we offer over 200, so we definitely have them. Thank you for joining us. We do have another webinar coming up next week, and it's for those of you that are trainers. It's a trainer webinar called, and it's like for those of you who've gone through certification, but maybe you're not quite, there to deliver your first session. You just need a little bit more of a push. So we have one called 5 Tips to Ensure a Great Start to Your First DISC Session. We're going to give you the motivation, and we're going to give you the tools to get it done. And that's next Tuesday, February 17th at 3 o'clock to 3:30 Central Standard Time. Thank you guys all for joining us today, and stay safe and healthy, and hopefully we will connect again soon.